set that for a second.
Okay, we are recording. You may begin when you're ready.
Good evening. This is January 11, 2021. Tonight we're going to have a special meeting of the Board of Matthews Commissioners to meet with the town and Charlotte area transit system staff to discuss the rail trail study. Dana, would you like to introduce this topic, please?
Hey, thank you. Dana Stujanki, the town's transportation planner. Thank you for having us at your 5:30 meeting, Mayor. We are here to discuss the rail trail project that would be associated with the Silver Line LYNX project. And so Jason Lawrence, who is with CATS, he's the senior transportation planner. He will be discussing the project, and it got kicked off in the fall. We've been in the works for several years trying to get this done, and he'll sort of step us through how we got here, why we're doing it, and you know how it's going to wrap up. So I'm super excited about this project because we really would love to see a trail associated with the entirety of Silver Line, going basically from Belmont to maybe Union County, maybe Stallings, depending. So we would obviously have a chunk of that in the middle where Matthews is. So I think it's a very exciting project. So I'm just going to hand it over to Jason, and I'll be here to answer any questions that are local to us. So Jason, I know we practiced sharing your screen, so let's see if it works.
Welcome, Jason. Good to see you again.
Good to see you all. Thank you very much. Let me find my presentation again. Too many windows. Here we go. There we go. Okay, everybody see my screen just fine?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And let me know if you hear, my child just got home, so if you hear children music playing in the background, I'll tell her to turn the volume down, but it keeps her occupied. So I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to talk to you tonight. As Dana states, I'm Jason Lawrence. I'm a senior planner with CATS. I've been with CATS for just over 20 years now. And I do actually remember many of you from an effort back in 2015, 2016, when we actually kind of kicked off this whole conversation of updating the system plan, where we focused on the Southeast corridor, which resulted in a light rail alignment from uptown Charlotte all the way to the town of Matthews. And I remember having a lot of focused conversations there at Town Hall about the alignment through uptown and the opportunity for a light rail. One thing that we talked about even back then was the real opportunity to start thinking about how do you build a trail element along the entire corridor. The rail trail in South End with the LYNX Blue Line is so popular. It rivals, honestly, the popularity of the Blue Line in a lot of ways. People are very drawn to it, and it's become like a scooter highway, and it's a very defined and important piece of our mobility. And we've certainly wanted to extend that to the Southeast. This study began as a partnership and continues to be between CATS and Charlotte Department of Transportation and the town of Matthews, and it's jointly funded by the town of Matthews and the city of Charlotte, and we're matching some funding through CRTPO to fund this effort. Before I get into, normally when I'm talking about transit, I'll kick us off with the LYNX system map and talk about the 5 corridors. But before I did that, I wanted to kind of zoom out and think about this in a broader context. What you have in front of you is a conceptual map of bikeways and greenways and trails in Mecklenburg County. And so if we start thinking about our trail system, just like we would think about our light rail and rapid transit corridor system, we really have the unique ability to create these corridors throughout our county. And that's going to have to come through careful planning and coordination. And I think what's apparent when you look at this map, most of our greenways and trails run north to south, or northeast to southwest, roughly. There's not a lot of east-west connectivity. And I think where the Silver Line Rail Trail and the Silver Line project has a great opportunity is to provide that east to west connectivity. And so even from the rail will do that, but I think that pedestrian element, as Dana stated earlier, defining that continuous pedestrian element from Belmont all the way into Union County is going to be key to the success of the LYNX Silver Line light rail project. So back to the system map, the southeast and west corridor, as they were once called, are now joined as a single project called the LYNX Silver Line. It was adopted in 2 phases, 2016 southeast corridor from uptown Charlotte to the town of Matthews, primarily along Independence Boulevard and Monroe Road, and then over into the town of Matthews. At the time, at that study in 2016, it just went to the Central Piedmont Community College Levine campus. In 2019, there was a decision by the Metropolitan Transit Commission to adopt a light rail along Wilkinson Boulevard, crossing the Catawba River, and connecting the 2 corridors as a single project of over 26 miles and 26 stations, connecting 2 counties at the time, Gaston and Mecklenburg, but also the direction to evaluate an extension into Union County. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about that from Andy Mock in his presentations to you. What you also see there is different progressions that we've made on the plan over the past 20 years, implementing the Blue Line extension, phases of the Gold Line, streetcar, extensions of light rail into Union, to Ballantyne and Pineville as a potential project, and looking for a rapid transit strategy to the North Corridor into towns north of Charlotte. So when we think about the Silver Line, what we've learned from the Blue Line and the Blue Line extension, that these projects are not islands. Things happen to the corridors that these projects are built. There's a lot of changes. And so we are taking a different approach to the Silver Line effort. It is a design and environmental services to understand the project scope and environmental impacts. Andy Mock's leading that portion of the effort. Transit-oriented development planning. We have a federal grant to look at transit-oriented development along all the stations along this corridor. John Howard on our team is leading that. He'll be doing more stationary planning in spring of this year, which you all will be engaged upon. And then I'm leading the rail trail study to find how we find that continuous bike and pedestrian path along the entire corridor. So not a project, but it's a program approach to the Silver Line. And it's a big project. And if you were involved with the public meetings back in September, you saw that to really cover this project, we had to break it up into focus areas. So we have one focus area that's Belmont to Billy Graham Parkway. The other is focus area 2, which is primarily Wilkinson Boulevard. Focus area 3 covers the uptown. 4 carries, from Central Ave Charlotte, including the town of Matthews. And then focus area 6 is the Union County portion. So that's how we'll be approaching it when we come back out in the public here in the coming months. We'll be coming back out with meetings around each of these focus areas. So when we're setting out to think about this project, we had to set out some goals and objectives of what this project will achieve and what we want to strive for. And along the project. So it's not just the 12-foot or 15-foot multi-use path, but we also designate spaces where we can have amenities for people who are parking their bikes or waiting along the trail. We want to be able to integrate with development, develop branding concepts, but that reflect the community. It's not just one jurisdiction. There's 5 different jurisdictions along this corridor, and each of them are unique. And we want to make sure that the branding reflects that. We'll have a public involvement plan working with each of the teams. And I think that land development strategy will be really important as we work with the town of Matthews and city of Charlotte and their development ordinances, how to preserve and protect the rail trail. Also, as we kind of fold in what's already been done before us, we want to make sure that we're respecting vision plans that could help inform this effort. And then you all adopted back in January of 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago, these 12 vision statements. And we want to ensure that the rail trail also is respecting of these. The multimodal stands out to me: vibrant, pedestrian friendly downtown, walkable and bikeable, small town feeling and identity. And I think that the effort as we go through, as we come back with you updates, we'll want to make sure we're circling back to these vision statements. We've done some stakeholder engagement. We had very focused meetings with the developer community, but we also had 2 meetings with staff and elected officials from the town of Matthews. And this is these all ages and abilities facilities.
Jason, Jason,
yes.
if I can interrupt, you're breaking up quite a bit. Are other people seeing that as well? Maybe you could try turning your video off. I don't know.
Yeah, let me try that. Let me try something else too.
I was checking it on my end to see if it was a problem here, but a couple other folks said they're experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me turn off my video.
Thank you.
Okay, let me know if that doesn't get better, and I can turn on my hotspot if I need to. So also what we heard was that it's not just, the trail has to be functional. This needs to be a transportation corridor as much as anything else. It can't just be just a trail. That we want to take advantage of trail-oriented development and make sure that's a project that can actually be implemented. And we're working really close with the design team on that aspect, because the goal would be to get as much of the rail trail built with the Silver Line project. We don't want it to be completely dependent upon the jurisdictions or municipalities to build this. We want to make sure that it can be built with the project if at all possible. So that is certainly one of the goals. And part of that also is that complete network. This kind of expanding mobility network that the rail trail can be a part of, where transit is a big spine, and then a trail is also helping all these other multimodal actions happen, like biking, pedestrian activities, as well as micro-mobility types of services. And it's, like I said, it's more than just one community. This is just kind of very high-level representation of all the different neighborhoods along this corridor and jurisdictions. So it's definitely a quilt of communities along this entire corridor, and the wayfinding, the signage, the branding, all have to kind of reflect that community context. So we're making sure that we're taking full note of that. So if you're familiar with the alignment, it's not exactly like the LYNX Blue Line. It's not exactly like the LYNX Blue Line extension. It will be in the median of roadways like Monroe Road. It will be parallel to rail facilities like potentially Norfolk Southern. Parts of it will be parallel to Independence Boulevard. And so there'll be different types of trail environments. And so here are some kind of imagery that we'll start to refine. And so be thinking about when we're paralleling the rail, this is some of the look and feel of what the rail trail can look like. That 12 to 15 foot multi-use path that's directly beside the project. Sometimes we'll be along a thoroughfare, like the North Tryon Street. Now that may mean that we're improving the back of curb environment. It's there on the top left, there's a existing condition there along Monroe Road. Down there on the bottom right-hand corner is a cycle track. Those are some things that we're going to start thinking differently of that back and curb environment, how to use that space to accommodate a multi-use path when the trail is in the median of a roadway. And then also, what about when we're in more urban environments, like in a town center, or when we're in an independent path? And so there are some examples of, maybe we use existing facilities, like you already have a multi-use path along Matthews Knit Hill Road, or we're sharing a space with a roadway. That's what those share rows there on the top right of the map of the slideshow. So there's going to be different aspects of this project throughout that we'll have to show, detail different types of cross sections that'll be important to share. Now I'm just going to do a check. Are you guys still hearing me? Okay. Okay, good. And then there'll be opportunities to think about pedestrian infrastructure and structures over roadways. This project will be challenged. It's got to cross 277 at parts. It's going to have to cross Independence Boulevard. It's going to have to cross 485, CSX. So how will the rail trail continue? Will it be on the same structure as a light rail? It may need to be on its own independent structure. Is that a part of an overall capital improvement plan, or is that a part of the LYNX Silver Line? And here are just some examples of pedestrian infrastructure from across the country. And I think that as we, not say every structure can look like this might be the gold-plated version, but I do think we want to start at the aspirational level, and then as we go through the effort, we can start to define that more fully. But just recognizing that there'll be parts of the project that will need to be on independent structure, and we want to take care and get guidance from and engagement from you all on that topic. Now, we've done some initial ideas about branding. We asked our project management team about when they think about Southeast Corridor and the West Corridor and Silver Line, what's kind of that visual preference. And we asked people, kind of give us some kind of fun things to go off of, to think about what the branding could look like. Like Paul Rudd ages well, makes people smile. Meryl Streep is versatile, timeless. Kind of like if you were a pop star or a Hollywood star, what would you be? And asking that the same thing for the Southeast Corridor. But I think that when you break that down, we want to make sure that there's an excitement when you look at the signage. The color palette should be bold and unique. Silver is a very hard color to see. So we may need to be very careful with the colors that are picked for the signage. And that'll be really important for the rail trail if it deviates from it's easy to see the light rail. It's easy to see the tracks. We'll have to be careful making sure we got bold signage that you can see the trail. And we get initial ideas that we kind of came up with, and this will certainly evolve over time. This was just the first take, but imagine, if you will, a series of connected signage that is branded, that that you're on the Silver Line Rail Trail. That when I'm on this infrastructure, that's going to take me to downtown Matthews. That's going to take me to uptown Charlotte. It's going to take me to the airport. I can go across the river on this trail, and it'll be really important that that's reflected in the words that we use, but also the imagery. And those are just kind of initial kind of thoughts and concepts that we have developed and will continue to refine. Also, important part of the study is placemaking. How do we create unique opportunities along the project? Where will there be remnant right-of-way left over from the project that can be co-opted for public art that reflect community character? The rail trail could also be seen as a linear park along the whole alignment, where if there's opportunities for green space that can be coordinated with the rail trail, how do we make sure that is all a cohesive planned project? And in some ways, there'll be opportunities for that to happen between Charlotte and Matthews, because we're so close together on some of those stations. Think about the stations near the Family Dollar site or near Sardis. Those station areas are going to kind of blend in between Charlotte and Matthews. It's going to be very close. So as we develop, we'll have more information as we come out for the public meetings, and we could come back to you once we get closer to a preliminary staff recommendation on the alignment side. We can start showing you our concepts for the rail trail and what those cross sections will look like. But for us, our next steps is to continue coordination with the design team. Stationary planning is going to be kicking off in the spring, and so we'll want to give input to the station area team. We need to develop an implementation strategy. If it can't be built with the project, how do we make sure that the trail can be built? How can these facilities accommodate micromobility and connected mobility hubs? And I think that placemaking strategy is going to be really important to give guidance to all the jurisdictions about what the opportunities are along there. And with that, that's my last slide, and I'm open to take any questions.
This is John. Jason, I just have a comment, really. I shared with the board a while back. I went to Puerto Rico, and they have quite a few of these type of trails. And you have actually taught me a new word, or Dana, over the last year or so, sharrows. I didn't know what a sharrow was. But when I was talking to some folks in Puerto Rico, and they have these trails all over, I talked to some of the locals, and they said it was very important. And I noticed some of your slides showed a differentiation of almost like a roadway where there was a line down the middle. And some of the locals in Puerto Rico were telling me that when they didn't have that, sometimes bikes were nearly colliding with pedestrians or whatever. So I think that's a good idea. That's just a comment. I like where some of these areas had lines that clearly showed where pedestrians and bikes were supposed to be, or what direction each is supposed to go, so they don't run into each other.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a very good point, because the space needs to be clearly defined, right? And to show that you're on it, that you know where you are. That'll be really important. Thank you for that.
Are there any questions? Hazen?
Jason, great work as usual. And I know we got to get through the locally preferred alternative for the Silver Line, but once we get through that and we continue work on this rail trail, it seems to me that an early positive step would be to start purchasing right away, because it's just going to get more expensive. And if we don't purchase it, somebody's going to build buildings there or whatever. Have y'all had much discussion at the CATS level about right-of-way acquisition? And if nothing else, let's put a trail there for X amount of years until the Silver Line's built.
Right, that's a good point, Hazen. We're tackling that from a couple of different angles, and so one is creating a land development strategy, working with rezonings, and working with developers to preserve and protect the corridor. We did that at the Hendricks rezoning in Charlotte. That's where the Village Lake alignment, where it transitions from Independence to Monroe, we got reserved space for a road, rail, and trail, about a quarter of a mile worth. And that was a voluntary preservation with the petitioner. We've done it a few places on the west side. In some ways, we've baked that into the TOD ordinance. If somebody wants to come in early for TOD, which they're allowed to in the city of Charlotte, along adopted corridors and stations, they will be required to, as part of that TOD, to preserve the future rail trail cross section. And so that's one way. We also are looking in our budget to do protective purchases. We have a line item for that. If that does come up. So far, we haven't had to use that, but we can. There is a process through the federal government where we can do purchase of land through I think it's called a tier 1 in environmental. I'll probably refer to our environmental staff to get the right term, but there is processes in place where we can be, and it can be used as potential match for the future project. There's a couple of stipulations on what you can do with the property, but we certainly have recognized this because the land is not getting any cheaper and things are getting built very quickly. We've already noticed that since 2016. So it definitely, yeah, Hayes, we are certainly thinking that through. But so far we've achieved it through preservation, through land development. We haven't had to do protective purchases yet. But yeah, we certainly, if there's places where we can start doing trail before, that's this effort, this study is looking for those opportunities.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Hey, Jason, who tends because the rail trail looks like or acts like a linear park, who tends the landscaping along that?
Mayor Pro Tem, we don't have a complete answer for that. I'll say that's probably the straight answer for that. We're still trying to figure that piece out, because even for the rail trail in South End, it's a mixture of public and private through there, because the rail trail, I wouldn't say it was an afterthought. It was initially an access path to access Blue Line facilities, and then over time it kind of evolved into a rail trail. So we want to try to prevent that with this effort. So I think that it'll probably continue to be a mixture between public and private, or it might be CATS, it could be CDOT. But I think that's we'll need to talk a little bit about that. And this effort has a portion of its scope that'll address that. But we definitely want to engage with the jurisdictions on that, because if you call something a park, that has different connotations as to who owns and maintains that. So we'll have to be careful with the words that we use. But yeah, good point. Don't have a good answer up front, but that's part of what we hope to develop some guidance on.
Thank you.
Jason, are we still seeing a lot of electric scooter use in Charlotte? And are they using the existing rail trail?
Mayor, for a while there, during the height of I guess we're still in the height, but during the pandemic, there was definitely, I didn't see a lot of scooters out in the field. I'm starting to see them, just anecdotally, I'm seeing scooters more where I live. I'm over in the Nodi area, so I'm starting to see them more. So I do think we're still getting some usage out of that. And for a while there, we used to get data from them, so we could check into that and see what their kind of a heat map and see if there's been a change. But even if we haven't yet, I do anticipate that is a shift in how people view micromobility. So I think that if you build this type of facility, you'll see those type of vehicles and scooters on those facilities.
I think they're fine, but when they first came to Charlotte, I don't get downtown quite often, but when I was there, I was shocked how they were bobbing and weaving in and off the street and onto the sidewalks, and saw several near misses in the little bit of time I was there, and they're really going fast. So,
well, I'll ask, would it be helpful? You're right, because there was not a e-scooter ordinance before that, or what to do with those new modes. We do have in this effort scoped some time and energy towards the micromobility piece. And if that would be helpful to the town, we could, search for some guidance of best practices about how do you manage it? How do you manage what other places doing? We could certainly provide some guidance on that, because I do think that's something that's probably here to stay. We're going to see more and more of that over time.
Yeah, I think they fill a niche, but when they were totally unregulated, they were just almost running wild or whatever, and
yes,
looked like a safety concern. I've heard of some pretty bad pedestrian and scooter interactions that didn't end up so well. So, Commissioner McCool.
I guess to piggyback on this from maybe a younger person's perspective, where I see how this is a benefit, it does need to be regulated more, because I've seen many people just not pay attention to anything and almost get hit by cars. But is there any thought of LYNX possibly partnering with one of these scooter companies to have these scooter stations at each station to help people move around Mecklenburg County?
Yeah, that's a great point, Commissioner. When we were doing Blue Line Extension, the multimodal integration was mostly for bikes at the time. So I think that as we look at these stations, we're going to have to think about other mobility. You saw the term mobility hubs. CATS is on a separate effort called a bus priority study. We're looking system wide about how to rethink our transit stops from park and rides and bus stops to be more accommodating and call them mobility hubs. So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think those types of modes are going to be key for first mile and last mile. And so, yes, simply put, yes, we're going to be looking at how to integrate those types of things within. And we're seeing it more from the development community. These big, large developers want to have multi-use paths inside their development, to accommodate e-scooters.
Yeah, I can see a need eventually developing as Mecklenburg County's population keeps skyrocketing and skyrocketing. There's going to be so much density that people are going to, want to get away from cars. So I think this is going to get really popular, like it's gotten in other large metropolitan areas. So I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
I do like the idea of having designated spots for them along the rail trail, rather than again, when they first came to town, you saw them dropped off in people's yards and in front of businesses, and not really put back in any organized way. So
yes, the corral might be a term when you start creating.
Have any other questions or comments for Jason tonight? Dana? You're on mute.
There we go. Just a quick comment that, staff has been engaged with CATS during this process. We've been attending all the sort of the management meetings, and you all bring up some really great points. And I just want to reiterate the transit-oriented development study that's in tandem with what Jason Lawrence is doing. It's really critical that we look at our ordinance and make sure that our ordinance is up to snuff for transit-oriented development. There's also a new sort of term, Mayor. Is it transit-oriented? Is it trail-oriented development? So that's another sort of niche thing that Charlotte is talking about. Is can they have a very specific development for when you go along a trail system and how you orient your front door. So there's some interesting stuff that's coming out of this. We're going to look at it again from, whether it's micromobility and making sure we have the ordinance in place so we get ahead of the game. But I think with the help of Jason's crew and the consultants on board, we could never have done this alone. And, working with the region is just so incredibly important and a lot of fun for staff to, work with everyone from Belmont over to, folks in Union County on this project. So, I thank Jason Lawrence for being here tonight. And I just wanted to reiterate, if you guys have any follow-up questions, we're happy to discuss it with y'all. And, we're excited that this is a part of the thinking about this project on the front end. And, Jason said that sort of the trail in the blue line was sort of accidental. We want to be really purposeful and how we develop this, and hopefully it will be a really successful piece of this project.
I have one final question I just thought of. Jason, does the current rail trail have those emergency phones, or if you don't have a cell phone, you could access police?
You're talking about kind of the blue light. I'm turning my video on, so let me know if I start going choppy again. Yeah, let me check it. I know we don't on the blue line extension. We may on the blue line. Let me look into that. If they were along there, they would be at the stations. They wouldn't be along the trail.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
But we can check. I can check into that for you.
Yeah, I think almost everybody has a phone, but I'm thinking, what if you didn't and you had an emergency?
Yeah.
And it's 2 o'clock.
That's true. Yeah, if we have these kind of structures, that might be important. If somebody's on a structure, we'll have to think about the safety and security aspect of this. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments for Jason?
I guess my last comment would be, what fascinates me is a lot of this stuff it boils down to right of way and like the limitations of right of way. And I know there's going to be whatever the light rail right of way is, but in my mind, this parallel path, in some ways it can't be too wide because, a 10-foot wide multi-use path, the greenway is really not wide enough anymore. And I think the county or somebody's now going 12 and, like electric bikes or, electric, everything has just become more and more popular. And you can see where a 16-foot, so you got an 8-foot lane is needed over time.
You're breaking up, Hazen. You're a little Darth Vader-esque there. You need to.
Well, if I could,
Hazen, great point, Hazen.
I think Hazen, what you're right on, because that's something we certainly heard from the project management team, from the town, Dana specifically, and then also Scott Curry on the CDOT side. He's the active transportation coordinator for CDOT. We don't, what is the ultimate width of these things? Because you're right, you got some greenways they have traffic jams on the greenways. They're very popular. So I do think that we should not short sell ourselves at this early a step. And I think that one thing that when the pandemic first happened, one thing, I don't know if you noticed, that there were a lot more people walking. There were a lot more people out on the street. Is that a trend to continue, that more people want active modes? And do we need to make sure we're not selling ourselves short this early in the process? So it does come down to space and what you can build. And I think someplace we're going to get creative about planning strip, buffer space, work with the state. So you're exactly right, Hazen. I think that that's where when we come back with cross sections that talk about space, that's where we certainly would like some feedback from the town.
All right. Well, Jason, we certainly appreciate your presentation. Great job as usual. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you in the near future. If there's nothing else, I guess we'll take a break and come back together at 7 o'clock for our regular board meeting. Any other final comments?
No, thank you for the opportunity. And it's been great to work with town staff to get this project off the ground finally. So I appreciate Dana and her time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Rest of you, I guess we'll get back at 7.